There have been different stories surrounding the future of the Constitution Amendment Bill number 10, and my guest tonight is Patriotic Front Bwana Mkubwa, Member of Parliament Dr. Jonas Chanda, and we're discussing the facts as well as the myths surrounding Constitution Amendment Bill number 10. You can be a part of this conversation by getting in touch with us through the numbers that are on your TV screen, and you can comment on the Diamond TV Facebook page. You can also tweet at us at Diamond TV Zambia, but you can also leave a comment on the Smart Egos page, which is live at the moment. And I would like to welcome our guest on this special edition of Costa on a Saturday. Good evening, Honorable. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, and good evening to the viewers out there. It's my first time to feature on this program.
And on Diamond TV at all?
Yeah, on Diamond TV, yeah. I do stories, but I've never really featured live, right? So it's a great honor and privilege for me to be here, and I look forward to the program as we interact with the...
Very interesting subject that we have ahead of us, Honorable, because a lot of people are talking about Bill 10. It's a subject that many people have taken interest in because of the debate that it has sparked. So let's start off by cutting the chase. I'd like us to help the Zambians understand, because they would like to know what the future of Bill Amendment number 10 is. There's been so much speculation with it. Some people believe that it's got no future at the moment, especially with the suspension, while others are arguing that it does. You're a Member of Parliament. Tell us what is happening.
Yeah. So, firstly, I think you've captured it right. Why Parliament adjourned. I know Honorable Garin Kombo brought a point of order. That was because of the court case, the injunction that's filed by Deepak Patel and other people. But although one has to question the timing, on the day of voting for the Bill 10 is when the court injunction papers are saved. We say that where I come from, the day the old man disappears is when the hyena basically gets out the white hair. So, I mean, we'll wait for the courts to determine that case. But I would want listeners or viewers to know that is not the reason we're adjourned, because I saw some very misleading headlines, like, oh, UPND does what something on your PF, and therefore the Bill 10 could not proceed because of a court injunction. That court injunction, the Speaker has reserved ruling. It hasn't been ruled on. So the only reason why Parliament adjourned was because of the coronavirus. The Vice President gave a statement which was supported by the Minister of Health. And looking at the expert advice from the Minister of Health and the Vice President, the Speaker agreed that we needed to adjourn Parliament. As to whether Bill 10 is alive or dead, it's very much alive. It's not dead, because the people that we were supposed to debate with ran away from Parliament. That is what Zambians should know from. Because, the word Parliament actually comes from the old French word parler, parler, which means to talk. So parliamentarians all over the world, whether you're in the House of Commons in the UK, the US Congress, the French Parliament, all over, one thing that is common among all parliaments, that parliaments talk. Parliamentarians talk. And the way we talk is through debates. And the way we debate is through facts. So that is the way parliaments work. So Bill 10 is very much alive, because the people have been making all the noise, running around, going to Prime TV, public debates. They've been all over, But when it comes to debates...
Which the Patriotic Front have been a part of, Honorable.
Yeah. I mean,
they've been a part of those debates.
We don't mind whether PF has been or not, but what we are saying, there's only one body. If you look at Article 79 of the Constitution, only one institution is mandated to make laws in Zambia. That is Parliament. So it doesn't matter how much you debate out there. You can debate at Prime TV, Intercontinental, Intercity, whatever, but the job of a Member of Parliament is to legislate. We make laws and we represent the people. So now, what is the point of having so much zeal to run around, debate on every radio station, on every TV station? When it comes to the House of Parliament, where your representative shows you to represent them, you cut and run. So
it's good that you've mentioned that, and let's start it from there. One of the major reason why the opposition have been absconding this discussion, they say, is because they feel this bill has not been all-inclusive one. They also feel this bill has mainly been there to propel the agenda of the Patriotic Front. And they've also said the manner in which this Constitution bill, amendment bill, has been designed is not in a manner that they agree with. In fact, this document has been regarded as evil. That's what they're calling it. They're calling it evil. So they say they cannot participate in the debate of a document that they say is evil, whether or not they're debating for or against. So what they decide to do is completely shun away, which which I understand, Honorable, you know is not illegal to walk away from Parliament.
It's not illegal to walk away, but it's irresponsible of a leader to walk away from the debates on the supreme law of the land. Because what's the point? They've been having debates everywhere else apart from Parliament. What the Zambian people expect is that parliamentarians, for or against, would debate openly in Parliament. Because Bill 10 has 79 clauses. So what is the UPND stance on each of those clauses? I haven't heard of it. You know, let me tell you something. When people, you know, like you're saying, it's their right to walk away and all that, yes, we respect their right, but they should also know that rights come with responsibilities. Out of 18 million Zambians, 156 were sent to that parliament to represent the 18 million Zambians. Otherwise, all 18 million Zambians are supposed to be at parliament. So as representatives of the people, I mean, I wouldn't say they have refused to participate. Why have they been participating in debates outside parliament? In fact, they have been participating more for the past 1.5 years or so since the NDF was held. They've been participating in debates, except that they've been participating outside parliament. Now, when it comes to parliament, there is hypocrisy of the West Order. They choose not to participate. So ask them, why are they participating outside and not inside parliament? I have an answer for that. The reason is very simple. UPND made a mistake from the very beginning. You know, when, look, let's go back to 2016, the elections of 2016. When the elections of 2016 were held, what did we see? We saw UPND going to court, petitioning the presidential election of President Edgar Lungu. They went to the Constitutional Court. You remember the case of 14 days. They went there, 14 days lapse, they were just on preliminaries. And when the case was thrown out, they are the ones who cried out the loudest. No, we need to amend the constitution. We need to clarify the role of the Concord. So all that, after the case, they lost the case in the Concord. What did they do? They came to Parliament with an impeachment motion to impeach President Edgar Lungu. Except that what they did, they just packaged the same court cases in the Concord, just changed the covers and brought it to Parliament as an impeachment motion. That is why the Speaker could not entertain it. Those are sub judice matters. Matters before a court of law which were brought in. So we know that the ones who cried out the loudest, oh, the 14 days is so short, you know, the impeachment motions, the tension in the country. You remember that Parliament had to wait for, I think, 1 month before opening, because of the 30 days, the Concord case. So to me, I mean, after all is said and done, you know, I can go through the process. We have done the process a lot, which they have been part of. So that's why I find it very hypocritical to say UPND hasn't been part of. One, they cried out the loudest. Two, they have been part of all the discussions of Bill 10 with the Minister of Justice submissions, the meeting in Siavonga, the famous Siavonga resolutions. UPND was represented in Siavonga by the Secretary General, Mr. Katukai, and the PF, all the SGs of political parties were there. And even after the Siavonga resolutions, we have had meetings of political party presidents. Ask the Law Association of Zambia. Meetings were being held at LAS. Mr. Ichilema represented UPND. You know, Mr. Kabimba was there. Now, all these party presidents that you see, we're at LAS discussing the same issues. Where the point of departure comes in, you know, and they should be very factual with the Zambian people, is about process. Who leads this? Because all along they had been part of the process. They had even suggested we needed to refine the constitution, we needed to amend the constitution, the Public Order Act, and the Electoral Reforms Bill. So I just want to debunk that. They haven't been part of the process.
Don't you think, Honourable, that the process is a very important part of it? Like, if they've got a problem with the process, don't you think that that's a valid concern to bring forward?
Yeah. Firstly, I would love to say that a constitution, one, is a document of conscience. Number two, it's a band of compromises. There's no perfect way to do a constitution. In fact, let me make it very clear. If you look at the constitution of Zambia, the only body that has the power to amend the constitution is Parliament. That is Article 79. And the way the process worked is that after all those processes I'm describing, Siavonga resolutions, Minister of Justice doing its part, the process actually went to Cabinet. You know, President Edgar Lungu and Cabinet started looking at this process to look at the resolutions of the political parties in Siavonga. It was when ZCID, Zambia Center for Interparty Dialogue, when they requested President Edgar Lungu, Your Excellency, could you vote the process so that we allow even for more consultations among political parties? The President obliged. He was not breaking the law by convening Cabinet. So the President could have proceeded. He could have produced what we call a Cabinet white paper. That white paper would have come to Parliament without even the National Dialogue Forum, without all these discussions. But you know, in constitutionalism, there's what we call this new constitutional thinking, where people believe that, you know, to have a good constitution, you need to allow for more debates, more dialogue. It's not in our constitution, but it's a new thinking because of the multi-party democracy that we're in. So what I'm saying is that there has been so much time and so much debate and so much talk. Now, when it comes to the process, you know, where they say only the church mother bodies can lead the process. Look, in politics, you don't have the monopoly of wisdom. You don't. Rigidity is not how we do politics. That is the difference between consensus and unanimity, where you agree on everything. You don't have to agree on everything. It's a give and take. Now, when someone takes a position where they will never compromise on anything, then they are not sincere.
They are disagreeing.
They are disagreeing. They have a right to disagree. But let me tell you how the process worked. Because even in an election, you can agree to disagree. But once a winner is declared, the losers have to accept that they lost, isn't it? So you can't continue disagreeing. Otherwise, don't participate in elections. So how that process worked is that you remember at Parliament where the National Dialogue Bill that came, looking at constitutional refinement, electoral reform refinement, the public order bill itself, and the political parties bill. The bill was in Parliament. We debated it. We passed the bill in Parliament, which the President assented to, which became the National Dialogue Forum Act. The National Dialogue Act, which is what established what you saw at Mulungushi, the National Dialogue Bill. And the demand to have a legal framework for NDF to happen came from UPND. It came from Honorable Jack Mwimbo on the floor of Parliament. Because UPND were very suspicious. They said, without a legal framework, anything that will be discussed will not hold water. So why don't we have a legal framework? And government listened, brought the bill, we passed it. But what did we say? When we started convening at Mulungushi, the politics came in now. Intimidation of MPs not to attend. Although I must give credit, a number of UPND MPs, 28 of them, defied their party, came to Mulungushi, participated in the National Dialogue Forum.
Which is something we're going to talk about later.
Yeah.
I'd like to discuss that further. But then before we talk about that, I just want to take you a little bit back. Bill 10 is being vigorously campaigned for by members of the Patriotic Front. It's being vigorously campaigned for by members of the UPND. Why are members of Parliament only coming out now to vigorously campaign for or against Bill 10 when it's already been designed? Why didn't you do this before the bill was made so that you can make the public aware of what's going on before you already have this document designed?
Yeah, I would love people to understand. You see, the difference between a bill and an act is very simple. A bill is a draft law. It's not yet law. So the way Parliament works, forget about bill 10. Let's talk about any other bill at Parliament. A bill is a draft. When a bill comes, it goes through various stages at Parliament. There's first reading, second reading, committee stage, third reading, and all that. So a bill is just a proposal. It's a draft. So what came from Mulungushi, the NDF, NDF resolutions, the NDF bill, it is a bill. It is a draft. It's not finalized.
Which could potentially be finalized.
Of course, yeah, but with the participation of all the stakeholders. And you saw that at Mulungushi, no one was prevented to come. By the way, UPND were invited to Mulungushi. They refused on their own.
And I agree with you on that, but what I'm saying is why are members of Parliament, regardless of which political party they belong to, regardless of which side they belong to, why are members of Parliament vigorously discussing or campaigning for or against Bill 10 now, after Bill 10, after the proposal is made? Why weren't members of Parliament this vigorous before the bill was made to inform members of the public what their intention was with regards to this bill?
I must admit that I've been very vigorous from the beginning, from the NDF times. We used to go talk about NDF resolutions, maybe because now we're towards the finalization stage.
But you admit that the debate has been more than it was before now.
Of course, you expect that, because if you look at Article 63 of the Constitution of Zambia, we as members of Parliament have those 4 duties that I mentioned. 1 is representation, 2 legislation, 3 budget approval, 4 oversight over the executive. So when you see members of Parliament talk about laws, that is their role. It's legislation. We are the legislators. Article 79 backs that up. So if we are not talking about the laws, the bills, then we're not doing our job that we were sent to do at Parliament. But that said, what I said is that when that bill came from Mulungushi, it was handed over to Parliament. The Speaker of the National Assembly, the Right Justice Dr. Matibini, constituted what we call a Parliamentary Select Committee. Because we have 3 arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So you see, like the process I was describing before, Minister of Justice, Cabinet, and all that, they were very executive-based. But when the bill came to Parliament, the legislature is the one that passed that legal framework to have the National Dialogue Forum at Mulungushi. Then when that process, the bills were made, in fact, there were 3 bills at Mulungushi, not only the Bill 10 we're talking about. It was the Constitution of Zambia Amendment Bill number 10 of 2019, 1. There was the Electoral Reforms Bill. There was also the Public Order Bill. So 3 bills came out, were the outcomes of NDF. All the 3 bills came to Parliament. And as I'm talking now, the Electoral Reforms Bill already went through committees, first reading and committees. The Public Order Bill also went through the same process. But again, UPND boycotted even the Public Order Bill when they have been the ones crying out the loudest about the Public Order Act, it works against the opposition. When we said, let's repeal the Public Order Act, the 1955 one, we have a new one. They refuse to participate. They refuse to support it. The Electoral Reforms Bill, they're the ones who cry out about leveling the playing ground. This is not fair. When we bring a bill to Parliament, they don't want to participate. Now, the topical issue of Bill 10, it's the same bill. It came, the Speaker referred it to the Select Committee. And this is where the politics start. When people are playing political gymnastics, you should see them fall there. Because when the Speaker constituted the Select Committee, it was well represented. From UPND, we had senior MPs who have been in Parliament for 20 years plus. Honorable Jack Mwimbo was there, Honorable Stumbeko Musokotwane and others. You balance it across party, independence, PF, UPND. But what did we see? Even before the Select Committee could sit, the senior UPND members started pulling out. Honorable Jack Mwimbu pulled out, Honorable Musokotwane pulled out. They just didn't want to participate. Yet they are parliamentarians with a Select Committee at Parliament, yet they are pulling out. So we thought maybe someone is intimidating them. Maybe their leader is intimidating them. Because how else would you pull out of a process of which you are part of? You are at Parliament. So that Select Committee still went on. We have a number of UPND MPs who were part of that Select Committee. A lot of witnesses came. So apart from the witnesses, 450 plus who were at Mulungush to make submissions, we had over 87 witnesses at the Select Committee. The churches, Law Association of Zambia, the chiefs, civil society organizations, Bank of Zambia, LAZIT, so many, came to submit. So you have the NDF, you have the parliamentary process, and the Select Committee made key recommendations, what we call the report of the Parliamentary Select Committee. They made key recommendations. Bill 10 has 79 clauses, which were looked at. The Select Committee looked at 36 critical ones on which they have made recommendations.
On that issue, regardless of what the Parliamentary Select Committee does, when the bill is presented to Parliament, it is understood that the bill is presented to Parliament in its initial way. Before it was presented to the Select Committee, is exactly how it's going to be debated in Parliament. Isn't that what also brings in fear and the mistrust that perhaps the way the bill is presented, and if members of Parliament vote for or against it, it's going to be implemented as it is?
Yeah, sometimes I just laugh. The smallness of our politics doesn't match the bigness of our challenges. People who are talking like that are very experienced MPs. For me, I've been in Parliament. This is my 4th year. But that thinking or that talk is coming from people who have been in Parliament for 20 years, 30 years, non-stop.
Because 15 is the most we have now.
No, I don't know how long some of them have been in Parliament.
15 is the most we have.
15, Yeah, so they are going, by the time we are done, there will be maybe 20 years, Yeah, so if they came to Parliament before 2011. But why I'm saying that, there is a deliberate policy to mislead the public. I can read Article 79 of the Constitution of Zambia, Section 2B. How a bill is, to do with the Constitution is done. This is factual. I would urge Zambians to read the Constitution, and I would expect those people who are talking like that to read the Constitution. So the Constitution says, Article 79, Section 2, subject to Clause 3, a bill for the alteration of this Constitution or the Constitution of Zambia Act shall not be passed unless, I go to B, the bill is supported on second and third readings by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all members of the Assembly. Full stop. And not only the bill in Standing Orders number 99 says the same thing. So what this means, look, when a bill comes to Parliament, it passes through what we call first reading. So when Bill 10 came to Parliament,
Bill 10 has already
so first reading was done, then it was referred to the Select Committee. Then after the Select Committee did its report, what you saw this past week, Bill 10 came for a second reading, together with the Select Committee report being presented. That is when UPND walked out. The propaganda they were making is that, no, if we vote, what I see now, they don't have any point that they are disagreeing with. Was I haven't heard. Initially, they were disagreeing with a lot of things. They have no deputy ministers. They want to bring coalition government. They want to do all this. Once cabinet assented to that, you see, Honorable Rubinda last week gave a cabinet position. Basically, cabinet has consented. Because the cabinet understands constitutional making. It's a compromise. It's a give and take. It's a band of compromises. So cabinet actually gave in a lot. Says, okay, let us go by what the people said in the Select Committee. So once cabinet agreed to the recommendations of the Select Committee, that carpet where UPND has been standing on to run around all the radio stations was pulled under their feet. That is why they chickened out of the debate. Because what are they going to tell the Zambians? What are they opposed to now? Because even with all the noise they are making, I can't hear what they are opposed to. Cabinet has a proposal. I haven't seen a UPND proposal. What clause they are opposed to? Because now I can read through what they were really opposing. I don't know what their stance is on the Christian nation. You know, there's a proposal to have Article 4, that Zambia should be Christian nation rather than multi-religious. UPND are quiet. You know, silence means consent. So for us, when they don't talk, it means they're not supporting the declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation, full stop. Number two, they were opposed to the coalition government. And the committee, the select committee, actually agreed. Most of the submissions there, the people who submitted, they said we need a majoritarian president. You remember in 2016, when the constitution was amended, it was President Edgar Lungu actually who took a very huge risk. He was new in office that time, when he agreed to this 50% plus one and the running mate clause. Those two clauses, by the way, are the ones that UPND differed with with MMD then, in the National Constitution Conference of 2010. So you remember in the NCC, the proposal was that we needed the 50% plus one, we needed the running mate. And UPND went to Parliament, they followed Article 79. At the second reading, they supported the clause. Then, while now they start looking clause by clause, MMD started playing now the cards. Then on third reading, UPND refused to support, and that is how that NCC collapsed. So even now, with all these concessions that government has made, no coalition government, no deputy ministers, the pensioners will still be paid. They will remain on the payroll as long as they are not paid. They will be like the chiefs, because of their head propaganda, like all the chiefs will be gotten, their powers will be taken away. Actually, Butane is strengthening the power of the chiefs. The four paramount chiefs, Chief Chitimukulu, Chief Gawaundi, the Ritunga, and Chief Mpezene. Those four are going to be recognized as paramount chiefs, and the house of chiefs will be strengthened so that a chief will not be easily dethroned, succession disputes which are endless. So it's all there. There's also the presidential petition, like the period should increase from 14 to 30 days. There are a lot of progressive things like the mixed member system, where we have marginalized groups in the country, the women, the youths, people with disabilities, the differently abled. We've said, look, let them come to Parliament to articulate their own issues. That is very progressive. There are a lot of other progressive issues, like, right now we have a challenge in terms of hierarchy between the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Court. Which one is higher? Because the Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary, but the Chief Justice doesn't sit in the Constitutional Court. So it has created two centers of power. You have one arm of government with two centers of power. The head of the executive is the president. Head of the legislature is the speaker. When it comes to the judiciary, the head is the Chief Justice, but has nothing to do with the Constitutional Court. So that is the anomaly. And the Constitutional Court is the final court of appeal. Any decision made there cannot be appealed against. Yet the Chief Justice is not there. We have issues of oversight functions. You remember, one of the key issues about Butane was that government is taking away the power of Parliament in three areas, the oversight function. One was that government is going to be borrowing money without parliamentary approval, which the committee rejected, the select committee, and cabinet has agreed. The other one was, the president will create provinces or merge provinces without parliamentary approval, which the committee rejected, and cabinet has consented. They have agreed. The other one was the signing of international treaties and agreements, because it was said that government will be signing international treaties and agreements without ratification or approval by Parliament, which cabinet has climbed down, to agree with the committee. So now we find all these issues, including the propaganda that cabinet will be printing money, they will take over the job of Bank of Zambia. All those things have been disapproved. That Drug Enforcement Commission, just by the change of the name, anti-drugs, economic and whatever financial crimes agency. No, they are taking over the job of Financial Intelligence Center. All those have been disapproved. The FIC is an intelligence institution. Wow, the DEC, it's an investigative wing.
So, Honorable, don't you think that also, just to look at it from a different way, you say 28 members of parliament were part of the NDF. 3 members of parliament from the UPND stayed back to debate, to be part of the debate for the second reading of Bill number 10. There's been no member of parliament from the Patriotic Front that's been opposed to this bill. Allegations have come in from the Patriotic Front that members of the UPND have mainly just been receiving instructions from their president of the political party. But the Patriotic Front, nobody has opposed the bill. All members of the Patriotic Front have been in support. Members of the opposition have stayed back, 3 of them from the UPND, 1 from the NDC, some members from the MMD, regardless of whether or not you're in an alliance. Doesn't this then mean that the Patriotic Front has taken a partisan position when it comes to Bill 10 as opposed to an objective one, because you say democracy thrives on ambiguity where there is opposing views, but there is no opposing view from within the Patriotic Front.
There's a lot of opposing views. If you come to the caucuses, well, we caucus as members of parliament. So as PF, we caucus. The vice president caucuses.
So there's some members of the Patriotic Front that are against Bill 10.
No. I mean, you see, in politics, it's not about I'm against this. It's politics is a consensus issue. Right? It's not about where I stand, the rigidity, the monopoly of wisdom. In politics, I may have my view, you have your view. But where do we meet in terms of the middle ground? That is what politics is, Yeah. So even within PF, when we do caucuses, from the very beginning, when we've had all these discussions, we've had very different points of view on most of these. Even at Mulungush, I would want to say the National Dialogue Forum resolutions were not PF resolutions. There were over 450 delegates there. And we even used to vote at NDF if you attended, because I'll give you one contentious issue that we had there. Like a public servant, a civil servant to join politics. How long, how much time should they serve before they join politics? The majority view, most people felt 5 years, other people said 2 years. There were all these. ECZ, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, conducted a vote at Mulungush, and that is how the 2 years position won. That is why the National Dialogue Forum bill has that 2 years. A public servant will serve 2 years before joining politics. But when it came to the committee, the select committee, most of the people who came to submit, what we call witnesses, they opposed the 2 years. They said 6 months was a fair term, and that is what is in the Parliamentary Select Committee, and that is what Cabinet has gone with. So what I'm saying is that in politics, you may start with this position, it will go through debate, witnesses will come, and then a position may change. You see that you don't have to be rigid. Look, the Constitution is, or the laws or politics is not like the 10 Commandments of Moses. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not. There are 10. You cannot add the 11th, you cannot edit or subtract. It's like the word of God, because it's coming from God, it's divine. But when we come to our earthly, manly affairs, it's a give and take. That is how societies have progressed. Even the oldest constitution in the world, the American Constitution, which is 232 years old. You know the way the U.S. Constitution was made. When America got independence in 1776, their first constitution was what they called the Articles of Confederation. They gave more power to the states than to the federal government. So the first 13 years of America's independence, they had a president who was basically more like a titular, what you call just, symbolic. The power was with the states in the U.S. Now that system proved very problematic when the country went to war. To make a decision among all those states, the governor, that govern and all that, it paralyzed the country. That is how come in 1787, President George Washington, James Madison and others, they felt we needed to refine the Constitution. So even them in the US, they went through the same process that we are talking about. They had what we call the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention, 1787 to 1788. At the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention, there were different opinions. When you read the history of American democracy, they had what they called the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. There are people who said, no, the present system is the best, despite the defects that it had. But the others who are called the Federalists, they said, no, we needed a strong federal government that could respond to the emergencies. We've seen the coronavirus in the US, where President Trump is responding. Under the Articles of Confederation, it was the governors who were supposed to do that. So the US did that. And the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention was only attended by 55 people, where he attended for doing about 55 people, no woman, no church, no union, no nothing. It was just 55 white men who attended, and only 39 actually signed the Constitution of the US, what we have today, 232 years old. There's no constitution which is perfect. That is why constitutions get amended as times change. But what we are saying, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. It's pointless. You demand for something just because people disagree with you on one or two issues. Then you say I've pulled out. You boycott. You PND boycotted the National Dialogue. They boycotted the Select Committee. They are boycotting everything and walking away. I'll be very surprised. Look, you and me, we watch what happens in other parliaments. Like in the UK, there was a very topical issue, the Brexit issue. The British voted in a referendum that Britain should leave the European Union. And it was a topical issue, the ruling Conservatives versus the Labour Party. But did you ever see the Labour Party opposition walking out of Parliament, Jeremy Corbyn? They stood their ground, they debated, because the whole idea is that they wanted the British to see who has a better point of view between the Conservatives and the opposition, Labour Party. And we saw Brexit failed actually in the British Parliament. But what happened? The British public, they agreed with the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. He won elections and the Brexit has passed. In the US, there was the impeachment of Donald Trump. the House of Representatives, the Senate. Did you see any walkouts there? The US, those are mature democracies. So I'm asking our colleagues to practice mature politics, so that Zambians can judge who is right, who is wrong. But you know, when you have nothing to say, the best is to cut and run, because they had nothing to say. Everything they were talking about has been agreed to by the select committee, by cabinet. So what were they going to say? And between you and me, I have a lot of friends who are UPND MPs. They agree with all these things that we are saying, but because they are intimidated by their leaders, don't do this, we shall expel you. They invoked what we call a three-line whip. You remember when we were doing Bill 10, what a three-line whip entails. If you go against a party line, then you'll be sanctioned, including expulsion.
But that's not the case, Honourable. The members of the party that have stayed in Parliament. So
we'll see what follows, because when you invoke a three-line whip, you remember Jack Mwimbo announced, the leader of the opposition in Parliament, he announced that UPND has invoked a three-line whip. So what I'm telling you, what that means is that whether you like it or not, you have to toe the line. Our government chief whip, Honorable Mundubire, he said PF, we didn't invoke a three-line whip because he said a constitution is a document of conscience. We left it like, you think with all that people have submitted at NDA for the select committee, you as an MP, like for me as an MP for Bwana Mkubwa, do I genuinely disagree with all those things that people have selected? That is what we call conscience. So we left it to conscience. Otherwise, PF should also have invoked a three-line whip, so that once you go against the party line, it's immediate expulsion. So that's the consequence. So those three MPs, Honorable Ungwangwa, Honorable Kansonso, and the other MP, we'll see what happens, because the consequences of a three-line whip is that you have to sanction your members. That is why they did that. And also have information, by the way, that when we were about to vote, a number of their MPs who they suspected could stray were detained, phones confiscated, or not accessible.
And I'll engage you on that, because there's some accusations that are coming through. But would like also to encourage you to get in touch with us if you'd like to be a part of this discussion. We're opening the phone lines now. And if you can make a call, do call the number that is on your TV screen and send an SMS. Then you can call us live and ask your question or give your contribution as we are having this discussion on Constitution Amendment Bill number 10, which is hotly being debated by different members of Parliament as well as members of the public, which you are a part of. So if you have a comment to make, leave your comment on our Facebook page or call the number that is on your TV screen. Away from that, Honourable, let's talk about the fact that the opposition members of Parliament, the ones that have stayed back, the ones that were part of the briefing yesterday as a reaction to Bill 10 by members of Parliament, have actually been accused. Last night, where you're sitting, we had the NDC spokesperson, Savoy Imboila, who says Honorable Joseph Tshala from Ron constituency, who is a member of the NDC, did confess at some point to the NDC spokesperson of having been offered a lot of money by the Patriotic Front to change his position with regards to Bill 10. That's not the only position that suggests money is flying around. The UPND have also suggested that there is money that is flying around, that money that is being offered to members of Parliament to change their position with regards to Bill 10. Is this something that should be regarded as a true position, keeping in mind that the Patriotic Front on their own cannot go ahead with Bill 10, because that doesn't signify the numbers that are needed?
Yeah, look, talking about allegations, those are again allegations. I have also heard allegations that UPND actually were also paying their MPs a lot of money just to keep them from, because they knew their MPs agree that Bill 10 is correct as it is now, with what the select committee did, with what cabinet has done. The UPND MPs agreed. I mean, all the MPs, they wanted the limitation to happen. The constituencies are too big. There's no MP. Look at Kasemba, it's under UPND, one of the largest constituencies in the country. Look at Katombora, one of the largest. So those MPs are our friends. We know that they would want their constituencies delimited. So all MPs in UPND, I can tell you that they agree with the content of Bill 10 as it is proposed now. Because Honorable Winda, Minister of Justice,
I'd like to engage somebody that is on the phone right now. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello. Good evening.
Yes, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for calling us. Give us your contribution or question.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question for the Honorable.
Proceed.
The question is, I didn't need to be educated much on this constitution, because I believe it's the same constitution which was amended in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, because I believe 2016 and the 2019, I said because it started last year, it's a short time for us again to amend the law again. in 3 years' time. I beg to be corrected and to be taught something that
you're right. The Constitution was amended in 2016 on the 15th of January.
Or maybe the question is, can't this butane wait until after general elections next year?
All right. Thank you for your question. Thank you so much for your question. You can ask your question as well. Call us live on tonight's edition of a special edition of Costa, and the number is on your TV screen. You can send an SMS as well, and we'll see if our honourable can be able to respond.
So I think before I respond to this question, we're talking about Honourable Chishala and all these allegations of money flying around. Look, you know, one thing I like about Parliament, when the Speaker is presiding over Parliament, he talks about factual. Anything that you do in Parliament has to be factual. That is why people are failing to come to Parliament, because all over you can talk about anything, but when you cannot present facts. So, for example, if
but this money flying around is definitely not within Parliament. It's outside Parliament.
Of course. So those who are alleging, like Honourable Cornelius Muito, if he's alleging money was flying around, he knows things. He's a lawyer by profession. He's a former policeman. He's a lawyer, and he's a member of Parliament. He has to be a responsible citizen. Let him go to Zambia Police, report the people who are flying money around. Let him go to Anti-Corruption Commission, report. What we expect of a leader is not to peddle in rumor mongering and all these allegations. What we expect of Honourable Muito is to say, I have reported this matter to Anti-Corruption Commission, I have reported to Zambia Police, and they have presented the evidence. That is what a leader should do. Now, when you have a member of Parliament who specializes also in innuendos and what, that is not the way we should run things. So, if money was flying around, he knows the institutions in the country. That should do that. So, it's another thing if the institutions say, like, no, we don't want to hear from you despite the evidence he has. So, I challenge him. If he has the evidence, let him go to Zambia Police and Corruption Commission, and let's hear also what the evidence that he presents there is. From there, the matters will go to the courts of law. Look, Zambia is a country of laws. It's not a country of men. Yeah, but coming again, like you are saying about Honourable Chishala, I liked what Honourable Chishala said yesterday when we were at the press conference. He said, you know, Honourable Chishala is a friend of ours, despite the political differences that we may have.
And his main issue... I'll allow you to finish your thought. I definitely will. But let's engage another question before you answer the previous one. Good evening. Welcome to Costa.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you for joining us on the show tonight. What's your question or contribution?
I want to ask the Honourable, what is his take on the issue of removing the commissions like the commission and the teaching services commission? There's a rumor that those commissions will be removed as regards the new constitution.
All right, he's got your question, so he will be able to respond to your question. So before we take the next batch, of course, we'll finish your response and exhaust these two questions, and then we'll allow...
So I will not waste my time so much on allegations. I think those who have allegations know the institutions in the country that are supposed to...
But are you not concerned, Honourable, that... I mean, it might not be you, but are you not concerned that if there's such a thought that's going around, then it's a possibility to happen?
If I accuse you of witchcraft, then you take me to court, then I fail to prove it. What will the court say?
But witchcraft is not something that we can prove.
No, people always talk about witchcraft. You can't prove it. Just like allegations. If I allege that you are corrupt, you are bribing someone, then I can't prove it. You sue me for defamation of character. So that's why I'm saying that person who is alleging that people are corrupt, let him go to the institutions. Zambia Police and Corruption Commission, the courts of law will come in. That is the way to handle issues. And if we are serious about fighting corruption. So to me, as long as Honourable Muito and the others who are alleging haven't done that, they are not serious. They're just playing political games, political gymnastics. But that said, I think I heard one of the
very first caller, the primary question was, why can't butane wait until
in fact, his first question was that we just amended the Constitution 3 years ago. Why are we amending now? So the why part is very, very important to understand. So why we're amending the Constitution?
Isn't it too soon? Was his context?
Whether too soon or not, but I think it's important to understand why. And to also first, before I even go into the details of why we're amending the Constitution, it's good to understand that the Constitution is a living organism. As circumstances change, you can amend the Constitution. That is why there is Article 79 in the Constitution of Zambia, because you can amend. The only parts that are very difficult to amend in the Constitution, one is Part 3 of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which requires a referendum, which again UPND shot it down in 2016. The referendum, they worked so much against it, only to say today that they're actually supporting the Bill of Rights. Who lost? The Zambians. So that said, the Constitution as amended in 2015-2016 produced a number of what we call lacunas. Lacuna, if you have to to use proper English. So when you have a law done, I mean, I wasn't in Parliament in 2015 or 2016, but what we know is that that constitution of 2015 created some problems, which were actually what we saw after the 2016 elections. What you saw, that drama in the Corn Court and all that, is what are part of the lacunae, which Bill 10 is trying to cure. So, like, for example, the election petition of a president. How do you interpret the election petition of a president? When you petition the election of the president, what are the transitional arrangements? Should the president hand over to the speaker, but should he also continue because he's an incumbent? I mean, there's all these paradoxes. The 14 days issue that CONCOT has put, was the opposition cried out the loudest. They said 14 days is too short. How do you exhaust a presidential petition in 14 days? And that is why Bill 10 is trying to cure that, to make it 30 days. There was the issue of, like, what is the jurisdiction of the CONCOT? The CONCOT is actually supposed to be doing much more duties than just hearing these election petitions and all that. The whole case of human rights should be actually with the Constitutional Court, but the Bill of Rights was killed and shot down by UPND itself. So what is the role? It's supposed to be a very busy court, the Constitutional Court, if that Bill of Rights referendum had passed. The hierarchy, I talked about the hierarchy. Which is higher, between the Constitutional Court or the Supreme Court? The Constitutional Court has a president of the CONCOT. The Supreme Court is the Chief Justice, who is the head of the whole judiciary. So we have two centers of power there. And that is why the High Court will make this ruling, Supreme this, the CONCOT that. But what Bill 10 is proposing is that the Chief Justice is the overall head of the judiciary. Any other person is subordinate to the Chief Justice. Otherwise, you're going to have a problematic, issue. So, I mean, you have had the topical issues like, when Parliament is dissolved, should ministers remain in office? Most of these matters have been in court, where courts now are burdened. And when you look at most of the court rulings, they will say, look, this law, you can understand it in two terms. And the Constitutional Court itself has recommended that Parliament needs to amend the Constitution to cure some of these ambiguities. So that is to answer the question of why are we doing it. Because if we go to the 2021 elections with all these things I've mentioned, we'll still have the same problems. There will be petitions in the Court, there will be 14 days, there will be impeachment motions, there will be tension in the country. That's why I get surprised when educated people like Sangwa, State Council, they will say there's no constitutional crisis in Zambia. So I wonder, maybe he was on holiday when we had that constitutional crisis, where Parliament could not open for 30 days, where the Constitutional Court was throwing out things, where the president was, an impeachment motion was being brought against the president. So that tension that we're trying to cure is a crisis in itself.
Allow me to move forward to the next question that was asked, and this is in relation to the commissions. If you can quickly respond to that, and then we'll allow for 2 to 3 more phone calls.
Yes, on the commissions, look, I must admit myself, and many Zambians admit, we have a lot of commissions in the country. When you look at the 2016 constitution, it created so many commissions, Of course, there are some very important commissions, like the Human Rights Commission. It's a very, very important commission because we are talking about the issue of, the human rights. We also have the Electoral Commission of Zambia. It's a commission, but it's very important because it's superintending over the elections. So we know that ECZ and Human Rights Commissions, these are, whether you like it or not, you should have them. But there are a lot of other commissions. Most of them, by the way, haven't even been actualized because, one, they are very costly. You need a lot of funding to create these parallel structures. So although they appear in the constitution, but just look at them, they are not functional because you need a lot of resources. And 2, commissions should be created as and when need arises. I don't think there's any constitution. I've been reading a lot of constitutions. You cannot start tabulating the constitutions. One of the criticisms of the Zambian constitution as it stands, from the previous ones up to 2016, is that it's too talkative. That's why you can have a constitution which is like a textbook. The American constitution, you can put it in the pocket because it's about principles, not about every detail is in the constitution. That is why people get confused even when you go to courts, how to interpret a very talkative constitution. So Bill 10 means to clear all that, so that there's no ambiguity. You cannot interpret one clause 2 ways.
So what is the response to his question?
The response to his question, some commissions I think are too expensive. We shouldn't even entertain them. But those key ones, like I'm saying, the Human Rights Commission, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, those are a must. Because we're talking about the human rights, which is the Bill of Rights. We're talking about elections, which are a key part of democracy. But other commissions, you can have any commission, this commission, that commission. But we already have, like I said, government is 3 arms. The executive has ministries. We have a cabinet, a president, we have government ministries. Should every ministry have a commission? That would be a very expensive way to run, and there's no government in the world which runs like that. So when you leave a window where you're just creating commissions anyhow, a lot of resources which should go towards development will go towards commissions. And commissions by their nature, you have to get people, employ them, pay them and whatever, instead of going towards service delivery and development. So to me, it is okay to actually cut out some of the commissions which are a drain on national resources, which may not add a lot of value. So we're not saying a constitution is perfect. Otherwise, if it was not perfect, what's the point of trying to amend it? So some of those issues have to be cured, but the critical ones that you cannot do without have to remain. That is what we're saying.
Let's deal with the facts of the myths. Why can't Bill 10 just be withdrawn from Parliament?
Why should it be withdrawn?
Why can't it be withdrawn and be reintroduced to Parliament with the amendments that have been proposed by the Parliamentary Select?
You know, firstly, the question of why it should be withdrawn cannot even be answered by the people who are opposing it. Because like I said previously, there are a lot of points. Oh, they want to bring deputy ministers. They want to bring coalition government. They want to take over the role of cabinet. There were about 14 issues that were brought out from Bill 10. When all the 14 issues were cured, it's like me, I'm a doctor. You come to me, you have malaria, you have flu, you have coronavirus, you have everything. When I cure for you, you have no issues. So now, if the Parliamentary Select Committee has cured the issues that people were raising, now it's sanitized. So when we bring a sanitized bill to Parliament, and the cabinet, if you look at what Honorable Given Dubinda said on the floor of Parliament, government has already committed itself on the floor of Parliament that they will be moving amendments to all those proposals, and they will be gazetted, by the way. So there's no running away from that. So there's no justification to withdraw Bill 10 just because someone doesn't want to debate.
Let's engage another caller. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Costa tonight.
Yes. Good evening.
Welcome to the show. Give us your contribution or your question.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, proceed with your contribution.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, my contribution is that the Bill 10 is talking about women consideration, and then it is also talking about the disabled. It is also talking about the youth. What is the difference, or what will make it work, since the current constitution is also having those elements of which they are not done actually in the current constitution. But what will make Bill 10 be able to consider the youth and the disabled people and the women as well?
All right.
What is the difference?
So just before you leave, I'd like to also ask you just a brief question, if you don't mind. What do you think about Bill 10? Do you think it's good or bad? Hello, are you able to get me?
Yes, I'm there.
I'm asking you a question. From your own opinion, what you think? What do you think? Do you think Bill 10 is good or bad, from what you know?
Actually, Bill 10,
Hello?
Bill 10 is on my own opinion, actually, is a good one at the right time. Okay? We cannot force things at this moment, because we have a lot of things to consider. Look at the price of minimum, look at the price of fuel, those are the things you have to consider this time, the coronavirus and everything. We are not supposed to start pushing Bill 10 before we settle these other issues. Look at the borders, they are still open up to now. Those are the issues we should first consider.
All right.
If we say
the
Bill 10 should go on because of the issues of the youth and the women, and also all those things that are there.
All right, thank you. I think got your response quite clear there, but you could respond to him immediately.
So he has a very good point, because his question is why if Bill 10 is trying to like empower women, youths, the marginalized groups, women, youths, and people with disabilities, they're differently abled. What about the current constitution? That is his question. So what Bill 10 is proposing is what we call a mixed member system, Because what we have 156 constituencies in Zambia. The system, how we elect members of parliament, is called first past the post. So for example, if I want to stand in Bwana Mkubwa, I have to go to Bwana Mkubwa, campaign in every branch, campaign in every ward. It's expensive, 3 months of campaigns, aggressive. Now those marginalized groups like the women, the youth, and our people who are differently able, are they going to manage? Are they going to compete on equal footing? So that is where now the mixed member system comes in. The current constitution, 2016 amended, doesn't cater for them. Because,
which I'd like you to briefly explain how exactly this mixed member system is going to be inclusive to this.
Yes. So the current system is first past the post. Now you take, this is a human rights approach, a rights-based approach to a constitution. You know that we have our people who are marginalized, like the youths, those at University of Zambia, those at Intercity, those at CBU, NIPA, even in ONE. 60% of the population of Zambia are young people. But if the youths have no representation in parliament, then who is articulating the voices of the youths? The people who are differently able, the disabled. Who is articulating the issues in parliament? The women themselves. You know how many women are in parliament? Out of 164 MPs, maybe there are only about 13 women, and the number of them are nominated, because it's very difficult in the current system for a woman, a youth, a person with disabilities to win. Like I'm saying, the competition is aggressive. Right? So now what a mixed member system proposes to do is that you can reserve a certain number of seats, maybe let's say 20 seats. You say these 20 seats shall be specifically for those are the marginalized groups, the women, the youth, or the people differently able, the people with disabilities. So what it means, it depends now how you prescribe the law. I will give you an example of South Africa. South Africa doesn't elect MPs the way we do. They have what we call, to them it's proportional representation. Parties just compete, then depending on the share of the vote, they start allocating the seats. So let's say if the South African parliament has 650 seats, ANC gets 60%, maybe they will get 300 and something, then followed by EFF, DA, and others. That is a total proportional representation. That's not what we are proposing. What we are saying is that you can have a mixed system, a first past the post, plus that there's those few seats that you reserve for the marginalized groups. So as to how exactly they will work and all that, the ECZ can prescribe that in subsidiary legislation. But what is important, this actually happens a lot in European countries, because we just want those interest groups in society, their issues are articulated. For example, a student at UNZA, they have bursary issues, they have not been paid. All they expect is that some member of parliament who is 90 years old is going to articulate their issues in parliament. But what we are saying is that the young people themselves have to come. So probably one way that you can propose that to work, this is my own view, is that depends on the share of votes. For example, PFU, PND, MMD, and all the parties that will participate. If there is a stake of 20, it's a question of ratios. Depending on your vote, how much of the 20 do you get? But it must be mandated that whatever you are allocating should be among women, should be among youths, should be among people who are differently able. So it's a very, very progressive piece, which is not in the current constitution. Then he admits that the bulletin is a good one at the right time. He's talking about the issue of timing, not about the content. At least he's sincere enough to agree. What I want people to understand, government runs, no matter what is happening. There are three arms of government, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. So, for example, we have coronavirus right now. We've seen what the executive has done. The vice president yesterday at a meeting of the council of ministers, the executive is already doing its job. We as parliamentarians, we are there to support the executive. I belong to the Parliamentary Committee on Health. So our committee system works. In fact, the majority, the most of the work of parliament is done in the committees, not in the chamber. That's what people should understand. So in the committees, we summon ministers, we summon PSs, we summon everyone. So as we talk, parliament is already doing that. So if we are not satisfied as parliamentarians with the measures that government is taking, for example, in any area, whether it's coronavirus, whether it's the prices of minimum and all that, Minister of Agriculture is summoned and sometimes on the floor of parliament. So the system of government to work, whether you are at war, whether you have disease outbreaks, so government can't come to instance like, okay, until we finish corona, we'll not talk about butane. Until the price of minimum is sorted, we'll not talk about butane. Until road change, that's not the way government works. Right now in the US, just before I came here, I was just watching President Trump at White House. They have a severe coronavirus epidemic in the US. Thousands who are infected. But government is still working. The executive is doing its job. Congress, as we talk, will be meeting tonight to look at what package they can, whatever. But all other functions, the courts are still meeting because they have to run the country. So government, a country doesn't grind to a halt because there is a situation. The policymakers are the executive. We are the lawmakers as the parliamentarians. The judiciary are the ones ones who interpret the law, so they're also doing their job. But to make the job of the judiciary easy, Parliament has to make good laws. Otherwise, the judiciary will fail to interpret laws and just say like, we don't understand this, back to sender.
All right, we'll allow 2 more phone calls before we can conclude our discussion tonight. But before we do that, I'd like to find out from you, Honorable. I want to find out, do you feel with the current position in terms of different political parties' stance and different members of parliament stance on Bill 10, do you think that this bill genuinely has a chance to eventually be enacted based on who is supporting it and who isn't?
Firstly, politics is not a game of chances. Yeah, so if people are playing games with politics, then they are in the wrong field. Because, you see, to me, I'm not even obsessed so much about do we have the numbers or not. And the best example I gave you is what happened to the Brexit in the UK. With the Brexit, the British were given a referendum by Prime Minister Cameron. Should we leave the EU or not? The majority of the British, unexpectedly, the elites didn't expect it, but unexpectedly, the people said we should leave. Then you saw the resistance from the elites. But what I'm saying is that although the British people voted to leave, there was a lot of politics in the House of Commons. I was there last year. I was at the British House of Commons at the height of the Brexit. So what happens, everyone came with their politics. Brexit failed, actually, in Parliament. But what happens is that people, I mean, Johnson, Prime Minister Boris Johnson now, he went to the British public. Look, these guys haven't respected your will, what you expressed. They haven't respected. When the general election came, the Labour Party was swept away. Brexit still came back 6 months later to Parliament, and it has passed. As we talk, Britain has already started implementing that. So, Bill 10, progressive as it is, would want it to pass. But if people are playing a game of numbers to kill it the way they killed the Bill of Rights, Zambians will judge them. Because I don't think the Christians, the clergy, will accept anyone who doesn't support the Article 4, for example. They should give reasons why they don't support Zambia to be a Christian nation instead of multi-religious. The youths, the women, and people who are differently abled, those people who are opposed to Bill 10 wanted to fail, they should convince that demographic group why they want Bill 10 to fail. The chiefs who want to be recognized, they want actually to bring an amendment themselves to Parliament. Those who are opposed, they should tell the chiefs why they are opposed to the recognition of the chiefs, the House of Chiefs and the 4 paramount chiefs, giving them actually more power. So to me, I'm not so concerned about whether we have the numbers or not. I'm more concerned about the Zambian people. The Zambian people understand that Bill 10 is right. That's why we are there, to tell people so that we clear the disinformation.
We've got someone on the phone. Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Quickly give us your contribution on tonight's edition of Costa.
Yes, I've got a contribution and a question to the Honorable.
Proceed.
My first contribution is that Bill 10 should be withdrawn from Parliament.
Why?
Because when you look at the procedure and the clauses which are there, they're not straight. And when I listen to the statement that Honorable Given Luvinda said that the clauses that the Zambians were against have been removed. Now my question to the Honorable is that how possible is it that the bill that was first read, it's the one that had the clauses that the Zambians had. Now, is it possible to say that bill which was read first is different from the one which was read for the second time? Or what?
All right. So that's your contribution and question, I'm guessing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That will be our last response, and I think that's a perception that a lot of people have, one that you will clarify.
Yes. I'm very happy that you has asked the question, and you see, it's good when people are sincerely, they're not informed, or they have been misinformed by propaganda. So, like I said, the bill is a draft law. It's not law. That's why it goes through all those processes. It's like I give you mealie meal to say prepare and shima. It has to go through the process. You boil water, you prepare the nshima, you wait for some minutes. That is the way the process works. So when a bill comes to Parliament, it goes through the first reading, goes to the committee, second reading, third reading, and amendments, by the way, are made on the floor of Parliament. It's not that when you withdraw a bill, that's when you're going to make amendments. On the floor of Parliament. So like, for example, if Bill 10, the second reading, were able to vote 2/3, we will now go clause by clause, all the 79 clauses, on the floor of Parliament. And MPs at that stage, including people from outside the House, they are free to come and move amendments. on this one I propose. For example, anyone can come in. Bill 10 doesn't talk about gay marriage in the constitution. Should gay marriage be in the constitution, that we totally outlaw it? We don't want to hear of it, so that it's not just in the penal code. Any MP there can move that amendment to say, like, I propose that, and as long as MPs support, it will be included. So this is not cast in stone. So when it comes to the bill he's talking about, Bill 10 is Bill 10, but there's a process, the proposals, the report of the committee, and what cabinet has already proposed and committed itself to make amendments. But even if you heard what Honorable Kasonzo said, even if any government was to be mischievous to say, like, okay, on the second reading, let's tell people everything is okay, then you start duping people like what MMD did in 2010. The third reading also requires 2/3, so it provides a safety valve, right? In case people were misled by 2/3, when you bring now the final product, there's also a 2/3, so it's a safety valve. So what I'm telling my colleague there is that don't be misinformed by people, misled. Bill 10 is a draft law which has a lot of proposals, a lot of amendments. The select committee has done its job, cabinet has done its job by making proposals to cabinet. And Honorable Rubin's statement, I have it here, which he delivered at Mulungush and in Parliament, where basically cabinet has agreed with almost all the proposals of the select committee, which has made the job for our colleagues in UPND very difficult. Because what are they going to talk about? Like, we oppose this, because all the contentious issues in Bill 10 have been addressed. So there's nothing to talk about anyway. So I would urge that you, the media, the members of the public, tell UPND to come back to Parliament. We want to debate. I want to debate with Honorable Mwetu, clause after clause, rather than going to Intercontinental. There's only one house, one body.
You could also go to Intercontinental.
No, but we cannot substitute Intercontinental for Parliament.
Let me allow the final phone call, which I'm thinking is the final phone call. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Hello. Good evening.
Yes. Hello, good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. Give us your contribution.
Oh, thank you very much. I wanted to find out from Dr. Jonas Chanda.
Proceed.
Yes. They do love the Zambian people. And the Bill 10 is being crafted for the Zambian people, whom they love so much. Now, my question is, what is more priority? Because when I look at the state of the economy, Zambians are struggling with fuel prices. Zambians are struggling with the high prices of mealie meal. Zambians are struggling in almost everything. Yet they bring this Bill 10, which they claim is so good and it has to save the Zambian people. But don't they have other immediate services which they can give the Zambian people as opposed to the Bill 10, especially right now? Why are we so fast with the Bill 10 as opposed to attending to these other priority areas? But not even just the coronavirus, but look at the prices of mealie meal. Why don't we divert our energy and attention to that? But instead, we're talking about the Bill 10, wanting the people are hungry, the Zambians, to support it. Why just that?
All right.
And the second question I wanted to find out is, if the Bill 10 is genuinely meant to help also the people with disabilities, doesn't the president have those powers to even select an MP in parliament with a disability? I believe we don't need the Bill 10 for us to ensure that the people with disabilities are attended to. We don't need that. We can help them even without the Bill 10 because the president can actually select an MP. He's got powers to choose from parliament. He can choose whom he wants to elect. At least he's got that slot. Why doesn't he use that if he genuinely wants to help the people with disabilities?
All right. The first question, I don't know if you're going to respond to it again because it was kind of responded to early on, but
I can respond because I've heard this again. You know, when debates shift from process, was initially, no, the process is not good. Then second, it was the content. No, we don't agree with this content and that. When you clear each stage, the debate shifts. No, we don't trust them. When the cabinet actually commits itself, now we are being too fast. Bill 10 has been a topical issue for over 3 years. This process started just after the 2016 elections. Almost 4 years this year. So I don't know where the speed issue comes from. It's not like it has come from nowhere and whatever. We have had a lot of discussions about Bill 10. So what you are seeing as Bill 10 is an outcome of a process which started just after elections. So the issue of speed doesn't even arise. That is now the new disinformation. You know, when you are doing propaganda, at every stage you'll be finding a new excuse. But the other issue of saying, like, we have other challenges in the country. look, if we have coronavirus in the country, so the country has to come to a standstill. We should not legislate. Let's put Bill 10 aside, because Parliament deals with a lot of bills, by the way. Not only Bill 10. We deal with bills. We just passed the electricity bill, the electricity generation bill. Right now in my committee of health, we are looking at this food and nutritional bill. There are so many bills that we passed. This is what we call the National Health Insurance Act. It was a bill that came to Parliament. We have had so many bills. That is the job of Parliament. So should all those bills, the legislative role of Parliament, stop because the price of this is high or there is coronavirus? Then Parliament doesn't have to do any job. So the job of Parliament, according to Article 63 of the Constitution, is to legislate, is to pass the budget. Should we stop the budget approval process because of this and that challenge? Should we stop the oversight function to oversee what government is doing? Should we stop monitoring international treaties because we have current challenges? So please, don't be misled by cheap propaganda. The legislature is different from the executive. Yes, we stand with the government in making sure that we tackle the challenges of the day, but the legislature, Parliament, has to do its job. I was giving an example of the US Congress. They will be meeting tonight in the midst of a severe coronavirus pandemic that is happening in the US, because the Congress has to do its job. President Trump and his executive are doing their job with other agencies to fight coronavirus. So let's not mix issues, because this is high. It's not Parliament which determines all those issues. Parliament legislates who have specific roles. Then I can also respond to we don't need to impute to put a mixed member system because the president can. In the current constitution, the president can only nominate 8 members of parliament. The rest, 156, it's first past the post. You have to compete. If you go through the adoption process, you understand better. For us who have gone through this system, even 2-3 years before you are an MP, that's where the process starts. It doesn't just start through campaigns. You start selling yourself. You spend a lot of resources. Those are marginalized groups, the youths, the women, and the differently able. They will not compete at that level playing field. And then that list that the president has, 8. It's a very limited number. Look at, we have 18 million Zambians. 8. And those 8, that's where the president, look at the Minister of Finance, Honorable Wariangan. He was Bank of Zambia Deputy Governor. He's a technocrat. He comes in for a very highly specialized function. So those 8, if we say those 8 nominated are the ones that will cater for all the needs of our marginalized groups, then we're not being fair with ourselves. And I don't think the youths of Zambia, the women of Zambia, and the people who are, living with disabilities will agree with that. They will not, because you need more voices. Maybe 20, maybe 30, and chosen fairly across the country. Otherwise, to tie a president to those 8 MPs only, then it will be very, very difficult. Then actually, those same groups will be the ones who cry out the loudest.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Costa tonight.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Proceed with your contribution.
Thank you very much. My name is Chief Sand and I'm calling you from Monza.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to greet the honorable members there.
How are you, sir?
Yes. You don't even deserve this kind, some of you to be called honorable members of parliament.
Why?
Just deserve to be called by friends. Because this name, honorable, carries a lot of weight. Most of you have become so dishonorable in this country.
Why do you say that?
If I may ask you, sir, how many meetings did you hold in your constituents pertaining to educate the people on butane, clause by clause?
Yeah.
Secondly, I want to find out what is the rationale behind the pushing of this butane so hard than any other issue in this country.
All right.
Lastly,
Yes, 3
I want
questions.
to urge Diamond TV to go to the constituents of that man to get first-hand information from the electorate. If he went to his constituents to educate the people on butane, because this constitution is for the Zambian people and not the members of parliament. So they should bring it back so that we make our own submission. And they should not push articles on our throat and say that the Zambian people have given themselves this constitution. They have failed to pay agro dealers. They have failed to pay farmers. They have failed to pay retirees. Now they are pushing butane. when the president has power to appoint the youth outside there to go
All right.
to parliament.
Can I
and
respond?
All right,
Because
all right.
he's debating his
All
own
right.
questions.
We'll allow the Honourable Member of Parliament to respond to those questions. After we take this break, when we come back, we're also going to take a look at the questions that you've been sending through the SMSs. So after the Honourable Member of Parliament quickly gives response to the questions that you've just asked, and then we take a break and take a look at the SMSs.
Yeah. I would love maybe to respond to this man. He's calling from where, Monze?
Yes.
Yeah, his Member of Parliament is Honorable Jack Muimbo. So I would also love him to tell me how many meetings Honorable Jack Muimbo had in Monze to propose the positions that he has been peddling. Or Honorable Moetwa in Choma, how many meetings he had. Personally, I've had meetings in Bwanamkobo. Yeah, he's from Monze, that's his MP. So even John Sangwa, these ones who are always on the radios, and how many meetings have they had to ask their people on what they are saying. So personally, I've had meetings in Bwanamkobo, even under the auspices of the National Assembly, sensitization meetings, and not only in Bwanamkobo, by the way. Just 2 months ago, the clergy on the Copper Belt will tell you, from all the 12 districts of the Copper Belt, we convened all the clergy in Kitwe, in Nkana West. The clergy were there because the clergy were anxious about some of these issues we are talking about. And we discussed 3-4 hour meeting. Bishop Lewila in Kitwe, a lot of other Reverend Chilekwas in Indola, all 12 districts, 800 clergy. I was the convener of that meeting. So in terms of consultation, I've done more than the MPs. So now I want to know whether Honorable Jack Muimbo and the others have also convened the clergy in Monze, in the whole southern province. Because I've convened for the whole Copper Belt. Have they done that? So we have been more consultative than them. So this issue, again, I would love to quote what Socrates, an ancient Greek philosopher, said. He said, when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser. When you have lost a debate, you resort to slander because you have nothing to say. Like him saying, the title of honorable doesn't fit you, and that is slander. That is why in Parliament the Speaker doesn't allow those kind of things. You have to be factual, you have to be respectful. We can agree to disagree. Manners being disagreeable. It doesn't mean that when you have a point of view which is different from mine, then we're enemies. So civility and just being level-headed is very, very important. We respect each other. And of course, I'm more of a cadre than him, but I would engage him more as a Member of Parliament, honorable. And by the way, I'm a medical doctor by profession, not a witch doctor. So I'm very educated. I've worked in so many countries.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
But you could also answer his second question.
What was his second question? Yes, so many questions like about educating people. I've answered this one of why are you pushing butane hard? You expect us to push it soft. I don't believe in soft. We are men of actions. Do not, for me, you come to Bwanamkobo, you compare Bwanamkobo with his constituents in Monze. In Bwanamkobo, I've pushed very hard. Because right now, as we talk, we're building the first modern police station in Indola. In my constituents, it's not a government project. It's a community project with a bit of CDF. Right? We'll be reaching roof level end of this month. We have built clinics. We have done roads. We have done empowerments. So I believe in pushing hard. If you're not pushing hard, you don't belong to leadership. So a leader has to push hard, not push slow or push soft. So I would urge him to tell his leaders to also push things fast. No wonder some of them, I heard one of them, 20 years in Parliament, what have you done in the constituency? I don't know. The people will say, 20 years you can't say what you have done in the constituency. So let's push hard. So butane has to be pushed hard because we believe it's good for Zambia. We don't want a constitutional crisis come 2021. And even beyond that, when we're all not there, what type of Zambia are we going to have? So to me, that's the issue. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the messages that you've been sending through on the show tonight.
Hello, could you help me with these herbs and natural oils?
Madam, what are you planning to do with all this?
It's a new herbal mixture I want to be using for my skin every day.
Mayo, you want your face to end up looking like Kanda? Mediheb, abako. Apanomba kuna Mediheb turmeric na Mediheb saffron. They have included all the necessary herbs, extracts and oils for
wow.
you, your husband, abana, na bapongri. Tutila bapongoshi.
Mediheb is in the pew.
Trust in Mediherb Ayurvedic Herbal Soap to take care and revitalize your skin every day.
There is a core belief at the heart of Liquid Telecom. The belief that every individual has the right to be connected. The pursuit of this vision. The largest independent fiber network in Africa. From Cape to Cairo, we are connecting more of Africa. Liquid Telecom, building Africa's digital future.
Woi, lero tikombo tiboni zona.
Woi, nisha ukanka mais.
Nona njala ngala pa haidi. Mongali kata tizeo.
Nandao yo samba kumanja kulibe.
Hygienic Spanish.
Contravening Cap 7 of hygiene laws. Mkudiasa samba kumanja. Je hygiene ya branch. Bad hygiene malpractice.
Apa no mbadairia. Yala michita assault pamala.
Sinzati majems ya manje sio kwala la monga ya kudala. That's why mfunko sambila na hygienic soap. Mabera you. Officer Pompi.
Go please, madam.
Go and hygienics and kurukuta them right now.
Hygienic soap is a powerful antibacterial soap with active silver technology formulated to kill 99.9% of germs.
Hygienic soap. You are safe in our hands.
We're diving in deep this March, flexing our muscles to give you a great viewing experience.
Let's do this.
Put your big girl pants on and forge your own path.
This is the first check I've ever gotten. You know how many people would kill to be a gram?
It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Hostile conditions, huh? Brush it off. Stay connected to GoTV for shows that will get you pumped up. We're going all in this March. GoTV.
Give my life to keep you safe and bright. With all my love, I'll lead your boat to shore. It's time to grow, to discover what the world has in store. I give my life, so let's begin with yours. Grow up, my child. I'll do my best to guard your flame. Live out your dreams. The world is there for you to take. Grow up, my child. Enjoy your life and feel the joy. Grow up, my child. You have my heart.
Delight baby cereal. Great start for little tummies.
Trade Kings, improving lives.
Back to tonight's special edition of Costa. We're looking at Constitution Amendment Bill number 10, which a lot of people have had opinions on. So many opinions flying around, and debate has continued to get hotter and hotter. That's why we're joined by Bwana Mkubwa, Member of Parliament, Dr. Jonas Chanda, tonight on this edition of Costa, for you to hear his view as a Member of Parliament and for him to hear your view as a citizen. Speaking of views, let's take a look at some of the messages that you've sent through tonight and some of the questions that you have before we take our final phone call for tonight on the show. Let's start off with this message that's saying, Honorable, kindly advise if this bill is for UPND or for the people of Zambia, please avoid politics at all cost. We want you to tell my mother in the village what benefits this bill will bring to her. Not all the time politics. Tell us what is out and in the bill. Forget UPND for now. Why is it that no one in the PF has rejected the bill? Let's take a look at another message. Some of the other messages that have come through. This one says, good evening, Dr. Chanda. Kindly explain to me what is mixed member electoral system? Who will prescribe it and with what majority of Parliament? Alex Pirio from Sinda. Alex sent this message earlier on before we had that matter addressed. My question is, if Bill 10 is genuine, Why are we getting allegations of trying to bribe UPND MPs? Also, if PF is genuine when they post something about Bill 10 on their Smart Egos page, have they taken interest to assess people's views? Because out of 10 comments, 8 are against Bill 10. Do you believe all these people are UPND? Finally, some of the other messages coming through. What is the highest fear of UPND? What is the biggest fear, I beg your pardon, of UPND? Is it true that if Bill 10 went through, HH will be barred from contesting because of having done so far 5 times? Please let PF highlight the main benefit of Bill 10 to hungry citizens. That's from Nyambi. And finally, if Zambia is a Christian nation, why did you allow 2 hours for bars and 1 hour for worship? I think that's kind of a bit out of
No, we can still talk about it. Yeah.
Well, I would like us to start off with one of the questions that have not already been addressed in tonight's discussion.
Yeah.
And one is that there's a lot of people that are against Bill 10, and if you go by the yardstick of social media, it seems like more people are against it than those that are for it.
Let me ask you a question. So
I'm not going to answer your question because I'm the one asking.
Yes, because now you have jumped to a conclusion. That
I haven't jumped to a conclusion.
Based on social media. Because right now, in my constituency, if you come, I have people in Kantoromba, in Kaloko. These are the compounds. How many are on social media pointing, whatever? So
are you not counting the people on social media?
No,
because those are real people.
We do count, and there have been debates on both for and against.
Are you not considering
we consider them, but Zambia's 18 million. And you see, this debate of the people have rejected. Who are the people?
But who are the people that have approved?
So those who were at Mulungushi were not the people. They were the people. Those 450. They were not the people.
What about
those
the
who came to the select committee?
What about the ones agreeing? Are they not
that is a democracy. You agree to disagree. So when the process moves forward, because as long as we are not rigid, cabinet has not been rigid. There are a lot of things that cabinet disagreed with from Mulungushi or agreed with. But why has cabinet made concessions? Because they understand, a constitution is a band of compromises. It's not about rigidity, monopoly of wisdom, where you stand, you can't be moved. That is not how we make a constitution. It's a give and take. So those people who can't move at all, they are fixated, what you call fixated thinking, me, myself, and I. That is not the way you govern in a democracy.
But why is it that only the ones that want the bill to go ahead must take and not give? Because it sounds like when you don't agree with the bill, then you are rigid.
There's no rigidity. There's no rigidity. You know what it means is that when you come to a dining table, why do you come to a dining table? It's to eat yourself with a meal. Right? People were invited to a dialogue. If you look at the constitution of Zambia, is there a provision where dialogue is? There is no provision. So cabinet, like I said earlier on, could have been within their right to just come up with a white paper, bring it to parliament according to Article 79, and we could have actually avoided all these discussions that we've been having. That is how, in the UNIP government MMD, we didn't have all these national dialogue forums. But the reason why President Edgar Lungu, at the request of Zambia Center for Interparty Dialogue, decided okay, let cabinet hold this process. Because we're in a democracy, let all the views be heard. That's why when you saw Honorable Winda talking, he thanked those who are for and against. But what we expect is that while we have been for and against, in the face of facts, you have to present your facts. I present my facts. And that brings me to the issue of debate in Parliament. So in Parliament, I was very geared to debate. What I'm doing on Diamond, I was supposed to be doing it on the floor of Parliament, but the ones to debate with ran away. So what we are saying, those ones who disagree, let them come to Parliament to tell us why they are disagreeing, instead of running away. Yesterday I saw some of them having a meeting, a debate under a tree. Instead of having a debate under a tree, come to Parliament, come and talk to the Zambian people. So we can agree. We don't have to agree on anything.
There's also sensitization, Honorable. But then also I'd like us to address a lot of questions because...
there's one I want to address about HH being bad. So that brings me to the myths, the disinformation about Bill 10. In fact, when we were just going to Mulungushi, the propaganda that came out very strongly from UPND is that, one, the whole issue of people, while they're meeting at Mulungushi, they want to extend the tenure of office for President Lungu from 5 years to 7 years. So there will be no elections in 2021. That's a big fat lie. There's no clause in Bill 10 that extends the tenure of office of the president. Number two, it was, they want to disqualify HH because he has never been a councillor or a member of parliament. So they will put a clause which says anyone who has not been elected a councillor or a member of parliament does not qualify to run for president. There's nothing like that. All you need to be president, to stand for president, to be a Zambian citizen of a right age prescribed. The other one is anyone who has lost elections for 5 times will not be allowed to stand. Where is it in Bill 10? Where is it in the parliamentary? So all those lies, or what we call propaganda, they were propagated at one time. They were all over. They want to bar this one. They want to. When you are making a constitution, we don't do it with an individual in mind. Individuals are smaller than the country. We do it for posterity's sake. All these individuals we are talking about are temporary. They will come and go, but the country will remain. So we don't have individuals in mind. So even most of these propaganda that I've read about Butane, they'll be printing money. They're taking over this. There's so many lies. But the problem, lies have short legs. They can run very fast, but they run out of breath. Now, when you say the lies have run out of breath, let's come and debate. In Parliament, the Speaker will not entertain most of these debates that happen on the radios, in this public, for whatever, which you can't back. You can make any wild delegation, but without facts, the Speaker will demand in Parliament, where are the facts for what you are saying? That is why people are running away from Parliament, because they have no facts to present. So if they have facts to present, let them come to Parliament to carry out their legislative duties in Parliament. Simple, So then the other issue that you said, UPND, someone was asking about the mixed member electoral system, although I explained it before. The mixed member system, what we have now is a system that we call the first past the post. 156 constituencies, people have to compete aggressively, both within your party during the primaries and also against each other during the general elections. It's a very long process. It can last even up to 2 years. It will make you broke or bankrupt. That is the way first past the post does. So it advantages those who have resources. That's what I would tell you. But now we recognize, using a rights-based approach, that in society we have some people, what we call marginalized groups, who are not at that level. Otherwise, if we continue with that, then there will never be any such people in Parliament. And that is why, like, the US system is being criticized as being a corporatocracy, where you need $1 billion, $2 billion to be president. We don't want to have a system which is only money-based, only for the rich, the strong. We care about the youths, the women, the differently able. That is why the mixed member system is coming in, so that they come into that Parliament to articulate issues that matter to them. The young people, the women, and the differently able, they need to come to Parliament. So that is the mixed member system.
This simply illustrates just how much has to be discussed, but unfortunately, Honorable, we have to come to the conclusion of our discussion tonight. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, and thanks so much to the viewers and the listeners out there. But I would still urge that tell UPND MPs to come to Parliament, because they should not deny the Zambian people to be heard what their stances are. I've told you what our stances are. Let them also tell us, or even publish a paper, what they agree with, what they don't agree with, rather than just saying no and meeting under trees. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to tonight's edition of Costa. It will be back on Sundays as its usual time at 21 hours. Tonight's edition was a special edition of Costa with me, Dinginda Jonah Buyoya. Have a good night.
This is Tandy. As she loves to play with her friends at school, every time she comes home, her mother sprays her hands to kill the germs from the day. But today is the day. Tandy is changing the routine. Introducing Hygienix Hygiene Soap, now with active silver technology and other multi-purpose bacterial killers that fight off 99.9% of germs. Give your family the protection they need. Hygienix Soap, you are safe in our hands.
Trade Kings, improving lives.